Greetings once again from Cooperstown, New York, side of the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another in our continuing series of virtual programs. Today, it's our virtual Voices of the Game. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bruce Marcus, and I work in the education department here at the Baseball Hall of Fame. And we're very glad to have with us former Major League player, current broadcaster for the MLB Network, Carlos Peña. We will talk in depth with Carlos about a number of topics. Before we do that, just want to take care of a little bit of business. The Hall of Fame, as always, thanks to the generous support of the Ford Motor Company. They sponsor these virtual programs throughout 2021. And without their generous support, we would not be able to do these programs free of charge. So we do thank the Ford Motor Company. Joining us today, virtual Voices of the Game, Carlos Peña. Played for a number of teams, best known for his tenures with the Tampa Bay Rays and the Detroit Tigers. Now one of the analysts who works on the MLB Network. He's also been a co-host for our Hall of Fame Connections program. Carlos, welcome to the Hall of Fame program, our airwaves. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. Very happy to join you this afternoon. I was looking forward to this.
Well, we're certainly pleased to have you with us. And right off the bat, I want to talk a little bit about a recent program, 8 episodes, I believe, that we just finished airing, and they're available at our YouTube channel, Hall of Fame Connections. And with each of those episodes, there's also an extra innings companion show where you and Lindsay Berra sit down with one of our curators to talk about some artifacts at the Hall of Fame. The program's a lot of fun. I have seen most of the episodes, and we've gotten some very nice feedback from our fans about it. Let me ask you this, Carlos, to begin. How did this program get underway? How was it that you and Lindsay became involved with Hall of Fame Connections?
You know, we started having those conversations early in the year, and I heard that there was a possibility that this show was just coming together, and that they were considering me as a host, and conversations started happening, and I think they gauged my interest, and I think that's exactly what sold it. I mean, as soon as they asked me and they saw how interested I was and how enthusiastic I was about the project, I would like to think it was a no-brainer. Just that I really appreciate the history of this game, and I have so much respect for those who came before me, kind of like just opening the path for me and opening doors that I could walk through later on as a ball player. So much respect for the history. As a matter of fact, I made it a point to every single time I went out there when I played to make sure that I did so, understanding that we have to respect the history that and all those players that came before we did. So it was part of my mentality on a daily basis. So when they told me about, hey, you're going to do something for the Hall of Fame, and I thought the show was structured in a beautiful way. The idea was amazing, and I knew I was the right guy for the job. And I think immediately the Hall of Fame did so as well when they had the first conversation with me.
So you'd been to Cooperstown before for the Hall of Fame game, right?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I remember going to Cooperstown when I was with the Texas Rangers, and I was not even in the big leagues yet. I was in the minors, and that was early on. That was actually before the season started. And then later, a few years later, when I was with Detroit, I went and played in the Hall of Fame game, and I got MVP of the Hall of Fame game. I absolutely crushed that day. Yes.
Yeah. You must have homered that day, right?
I did. Yeah. You know, and I was kind of in a sense, I was a little upset because actually, I shouldn't say a little, I was upset because the stats do not count. They didn't count on my card. I'm like, are you kidding me? I have this huge game and they're not going to count my stats. But nevertheless, one of the coolest things was that when I went to the Hall of Fame to do this Hall of Fame Connection show, I was gifted this beautiful plaque of that day, you know. So it brought back all those great memories. And I thought it was so awesome, including check this out, Bruce. It was a scouting report. I don't know where they found this. It was a scouting report for when I was in high school and then in maybe early years of college. And I couldn't believe the scout's handwriting, talking about my skill. His bat speed is really good. His fielding is top notch. And the thing that I loved the most was that in the report, it said something about my family. It says, great supporting family. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome that scouts even see that. And they valued that as one of my strengths. So what can I say? I mean, going to the Hall of Fame is just full of surprises. You think, yeah. I mean, it never ends.
It's funny you mentioned that we have that scouting report. We're going to show it a little bit later on. And it's got a very interesting comparison of you to another player that I'm sure you know about. We'll talk about that in a moment. I imagine if you had played regularly at Doubleday Field, full season or half season there, obviously 81 home games, you'd probably hit 75, 80 home runs, right?
I would say 100. Yeah. That's a great hitting spot. It really was. And, it's almost like divine intervention. I know that I'm going to go over there, play in the Hall of Fame, and it's such a magical place. Or, it almost seems like the veil between heaven and earth and Cooperstown is very translucent. It's actually almost transparent, So I'm like, wow, then this place. And I go off as a hitter. I started crushing and had a wonderful game. What did help me, because then later on after that game, I actually carried on into the stats that did count, when I went back. So it counted somewhere, and it most definitely got me back on track.
It's been a coming out game for a number of players. Steve Carlton, when he was a very young player in the Cardinals organization, had a terrific outing. I believe he was a starter in a Hall of Fame game back in the 1960s. And that sort of became a launching pad to his getting a full-time shot with the Cardinals. We know the dimensions at Doubleday are very friendly. I'm going to ask you something, though, I've never asked a hitter. How are the sight lines? How is the hitting background at Doubleday? Of course, they're all day games there. There's no lights. But in terms of the sight, the background for a hitter, how is that at Doubleday?
No, it was great for me. I have no complaints whatsoever. And, now I'm having a hard time remembering exactly where the release point of the pitcher was coming out of, but I certainly did not have any trouble seeing the baseball that day.
Yeah. Let's get back to the Hall of Fame Connections and Connections Extra Innings programs. For those who maybe have not seen it, essentially what the program does is it connects players often from different generations through their artifacts here at the museum. And in any one program, it could be 5, 6, 7 different artifacts from different players that are covered. So that gave you a chance to see, and in some cases, hold some of these artifacts. Was there one in particular, one artifact, one player in particular that story really made a connection for you?
Well, I mean, when I was holding Babe Ruth's bat, in my hand, it was something that I never expected to have an opportunity to do so. And all the thoughts I had, I'm thinking to myself, wow, it's so much history. This bat was used by Babe Ruth, and every single time he hit a home run, he would mark it. And there were at least 27 marks on the bat, like right around the label for every home run he hit. And I thought to myself, how is this even possible? Like in batting practice, you'll chip a bat, you'll crack it, let alone in a game, So how do you go with that same bat and you hit 27 home runs and you mark the bat and the bat is still intact? As a matter of fact, I was looking at the barrel and I'm thinking, this is pretty consistent contact, because you can almost see the marks of the baseballs where he was making contact with them. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is really surreal. This is unbelievable that I'm holding Babe Ruth's bat. This is a real thing. So this is stuff of legends, but this is more of a legend. This is more than a legend, because this is the actual artifact, the actual bat he used. And I was thinking, man, does this give me power? Like if I grab Babe Ruth's bat and then I go out and play, I probably would have been a better player. You know, you start thinking like a kid. So that's the one thing I love about the Hall of Fame is that when you go there, you become younger in a sense, because I was like a kid in a candy store. And rightfully so. Isn't that what it is supposed to do? Isn't that the emotions that being in the Hall of Fame supposed to rise in us? It certainly did for me.
When you held the Ruth bat in your hand, did it feel very heavy?
it was huge,
Yeah.
and the handle was really, really thick. Which again, I started thinking you would have to have either really big hands, or it was something they did on purpose, because it didn't allow the players to roll their wrist, so they couldn't roll over pitches. And I'm like, wow, that's also very smart. As a matter of fact, I used to try to do that when I played, and little did I know that Babe Ruth did the same thing to help himself, perhaps not to roll over too soon and stay through the baseball.
I know you also had a chance to hold Roberto Clemente's bat. I believe that's 36 ounces, one that he typically used. He tended to go toward heavier bats, even though he was only about 5'11", 175, 180 pounds. How about Clemente? You are not from Puerto Rico, but there is still some common Latino heritage there. What was it like to have a Clemente artifact like his bat in your hands?
Yes, like I said earlier, there's so many moments when I was doing the show, and in that one in particular, holding Clemente's 3,000 hit bat. You know, that is amazing to me. That's a moment that is etched in history, and a moment that's iconic. He's our trailblazer, and I was telling you earlier how much I respect history, because I understand that those who came before me open up the doors so that I could then achieve and live out my dream, you know? So I'm sitting there looking at this bat, I'm thinking to myself, it brought back, you kind of get welled up a little bit, because you think to yourself, what was his legacy? What was Clemente's legacy? He was an unbelievable ball player, but he was so good about utilizing his platform to help others. And I'm sitting there holding the bat, and you can't help but get emotional, you know. And I started getting a little kind of teary-eyed, and it's like, wow, that's amazing, you know. And so that was a very special moment for me. And then objectively looking at the bat, it's very, very characteristic of that high average type of, you know, high probability swing that he had, because again, I was looking at the handle. He was a guy that didn't necessarily, he wasn't in and out of the zone. He was in the zone, stayed in the zone for a long time. Something that perhaps Babe Ruth had to find help with, you know, utilizing perhaps the right bat. I think it was more natural for a guy like Clemente, but Clemente also had a thicker handle. Yeah. So it made me think, I'm like, maybe I should have used a thicker handle all my career. And I wish I would have known that trick.
Yeah. I know you're too young to have seen Clemente play. Have you ever met any of his family? Either his widow Vera passed away, I guess it was last year, or the sons, in particular, Luis or Roberto Jr., who both spent a lot of time here in the States.
Yeah, I have great family, and I love how much they understand. Not only, hey, that was, you know, their dad, but I think they also understand his legacy, you know, in the world, in the industry of baseball, which is pretty cool to see. And you know, you're like, man, that's what we all aspire, maybe to have a little bit of a fraction of our children, you know, my children, for example, to one day look at me and be proud, you know. So I love to see that. They're so loving and respectful and very diligent about honoring their father's legacy.
Carlos, one final question on the Hall of Fame Connections programs. I imagine having had a chance to come up here, see these artifacts, talk to our various curators, Tom Schieber, John Odell, Gabrielle Augustine, Eric Stroll. I imagine your knowledge of our museum and just at least a handful of these artifacts has increased several times over.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. This show to me, I think it was perfectly executed. You know, if I may say so. I know that I'm biased because I participated and it was a part of the whole entire production. But I just think that what you see is genuine. I mean, Lindsay Berra is with me. She is in total awe. And it was so much fun. Like I said earlier about the Clemente family, Lindsay, it's so aware of her granddad, you know, Yogi Berra, and his legacy. And she's so proud of that legacy that they left behind, of that heritage. And I really admire that. And just sitting there, I became way more knowledgeable of the history of the game of baseball, but I'm hungry for more. So in a sense, it made me feel like baseball is just, there's so much more to learn. So I'm like, okay, I think I had a good grasp in this industry as a player, this and that, but it's so much bigger than I could have realized. You know, there's so many beautiful stories that I was immediately saying, I got to take, you know, my children had not been there, you know, my two boys, I have two boys and a daughter. And I was speaking to my wife and I said, babe, we have to bring the kids. This is beyond baseball. I think every American should visit the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Not if you're a baseball fan. No, if you're an American, you should visit the National Baseball Hall of Fame. If you are, you know, it should be part of your, at least once in your life, just visit. It's a special place. So I'm certainly looking forward to taking my children over to Cooperstown.
Absolutely. And we've got a lot of things for them to do here. Of course, we work in education, so working with kids is something we do on a day-to-day basis. Again, the program is Hall of Fame Connections. Its companion show is Extra Innings, and you can view all of those programs at our YouTube channel, which you can access either through the Hall of Fame website or by going directly to youtube.com. I want to talk, Carlos, about your upbringing, your Latino heritage. Tell us about your childhood, because in many ways it was not typical. You're born in the Dominican, but then moved at a fairly young age to the United States. Tell us about that.
Yes, a very, very incredible journey. I mean, I was 14 years old when I came over to the United States, but in the Dominican Republic, I had a beautiful childhood. I mean, it was amazing. I was outside with my friends. There were like maybe 30 kids of this around the same age, and we would be out there, you know, riding bikes, playing stickball, running around, hide and seek, you know, you name it. It was a beautiful childhood. So you could understand when my parents get this invitation, because years before, my uncle, who was a United States citizen, had petitioned for them to become residents. And the letter came in the mail. It was like, hey, you know, your case finally has come up. I thought dad and mom had just pretty much forgotten about that. And they had their life, their professional life, their social life. And the letter comes and they had to make a decision. It's like, what do we do? Here it is. Here's the opportunity to take a whole entire family to the United States. And they made the decision to do so, just to broaden our horizons. But we were heartbroken. We didn't want to leave Dominican Republic, you know, myself and my siblings. So then this cultural shock, you know, at 14 years old, arriving as a sophomore, young sophomore in high school, leaving all my friends behind, and came to this strange, different land that I heard so much about. You know, I had traveled to New York before to visit and came back and I loved it, but now we are like staying. And I used to do it, you know, a couple of times in the summer. So when winter came, we settled in Haverhill, Massachusetts. So when winter came, then I was like, really? This was not a good idea. Like, where are we supposed to play baseball now? Like, we can't even go outside, and it's absolutely freezing, and it was difficult to get ourselves situated. You know, we had to really like make our way. You know, at first we were in the attic of my uncle's house, and that got extremely cold, you know, because there was no heat up there, until finally my mom and dad were able to find a solid job to be able to get an apartment. So it was such a shift. I mean, we were perfectly fine, and yeah, we had everything we needed, and then here we are in the United States struggling, and you know, my friends are left behind. It's freezing cold. I can't play baseball outside. I can't run outside. I can't do anything. But then, you know, man, we met so many great people that really helped us. And my dad, it's really good at making friends. I'm really good at making friends. And you know, the community kind of like rallied behind us, and we got established. And at the end of the day, we thrived. You know, now I look back at that time, even though it was difficult at the beginning, I thank my mom and dad for the decision they made. It was a huge sacrifice and highly adventurous, if you think about it. Like, how in the world do you leave and everything you built and then start over again? Well, they were highly motivated. They wanted us to have broader horizons, and it certainly played out that way. You know, we all four of us went to college, you know, great universities. All four of us, you know, I'm talking about myself and my siblings, graduated. You know, I played Major League Baseball. It's, you know, we established ourselves in this beautiful country, and we're very grateful to our parents for the sacrifice they made when things were quite difficult. So yeah. I'll be forever grateful.
Carlos, prior to your arrival in the U.S., had you spoken English even a little bit?
So when I was in the Dominican Republic, my mom placed me in this institute. So I would go to school at first, and I would take classes at, it was El Dominico Americano. It was just a learn English as a second language institute, and I took my classes. Now, of course, it's not the same, you know, like I knew some vocabulary. When you get to the United States and now you have to speak it, that's when the challenge really, really begins. But full immersion, like go all into a culture and just be thrown in the middle of the language, and you have to speak it. That is the best teacher. One thing I will say is that because mom was such so disciplined with education. Like, that's one of the things she always said, like, hey man, you need to do well in school. You need to study. You need to speak well. Like, even in Spanish, like, speak well. Don't cut off words. You know, we speak well in this house. Well, the same thing, she was asked from us to speak English also well. So we kind of went the extra mile with the language, to be honest, Bruce.
Yeah.
So I would say I was at 10% when I arrived to the United States, and hopefully I sound like close to 100. I hope.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're completely fluent in both languages. You can hardly hear any kind of accent in your English. Maybe just a tinge. What's your default language? What's easier of the two, Spanish or English?
Wow, now it's either or, and it's a lot of people ask me this, and it's amazing because this is true. It's like, what language do you think of? You think in it. You think. You don't think in any language. A thought is a thought. And now I'm to the point where I don't know if I think in English or in Spanish. So that's when you truly know that you achieved a high level of languages, bilingual. Or if you speak I speak Italian as well, but I'm not there yet in Italian. I'm not to this level yet. But yeah, in English and Spanish, to me, it's interchangeable. Maybe my left side is English, my right side is Spanish, but I feel like I have a good dominion in both languages.
Yeah, it's remarkable. It takes some talent to do that, along with the practice.
Thank you.
Let's talk about your Latino heritage growing up in the Dominican. Did you have a baseball player that was a hero, a Latin American player? Was it a Dominican player specifically? Was there one guy that you really gravitated towards, or were there several players that you really liked?
I'll tell you a story, and this is really cool because when I was in Dominican Republic, it was Channel 10. It was the Telecable Nacional, which is the local cable company. They had WGN games, and we used to get the Cubs. And when I saw George Bell from the Dominican Republic hit a home run, that was my dad says that was the first time I said, I want to be a big league ball player. When I saw George Bell hit that home run, I saw that place erupt. And he played there briefly with the Cubs. It wasn't that long. And when I saw him hit that home run, of course, I'm looking up all the stats. And now I realized that he was a former MVP. He was a really, really big Dominican star. But I think that was when I finally said that I wanted to become a Major League Baseball player. So George Bell was my baseball hero growing up, and the one that really inspired me to want to be a player.
That's interesting. Tremendous hitter. For those who never saw him hit.
Can I say this to you, Bruce? When I see George Bell, I remember thinking to myself, man, that's a pretty cool name, like George Bell. He's from the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
His name is Carlos Felipe Peña. Like, how in the world am I going to make it to the big leagues with that type of name? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's George. It's like, sounds, you got like a little English in there, like George. So can you believe that for quite a while, I started calling myself the translation of Carlos, which was Charlie. So around the neighborhood, I would say, hey, don't call me Carlos, call me Charlie. Because I thought that Charlie Peña had a better sound to it, and it would increase my chances at making the major leagues. Little did I know that George Bell, it's just a translation of Jorge. So his real name is Jorge Bell. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I could just stick with Carlos. It could work.
Now, I speak a little bit of Spanish. I actually do come from some Spanish heritage as well. I would think that Bell, if you say it in Spanish, two L's together are usually a Y sound, but maybe not when you end the word. I'm not sure how that works.
Yes, since there's no vowel after the double L, then it sounds like an L.
I see. Okay.
But if there would be a vowel after that double L, then yes, it would be like a J sound, like the Y sound.
Yeah, Bello, Bella, something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you know George pretty well. You've met him a number of times.
Yes. I spent a little bit of time actually this past summer with him, and just a beautiful family. I even met his mother and spent a little bit of time with her. I've met his daughter. Just a great family. So you know how they say, hey, don't meet your heroes. You know what I mean? Like they'll disappoint you, which is so. It's so negative, right? It's so like discouraging when you hear people say that. I hate it. But I gotta say, I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna meet George Bell. How is he gonna be? Unbelievable. So my case, it was the total opposite. It made me even more of a fan because not only did I like what he represented on the baseball field, you remember that fight that he had, man. He was a hardcore player, played hard every day. He had this fire about him. But it's even more impressive who he is as a father, as a son, just as a man. So I was really pleased and privileged and honored to spend a little bit of time with, my childhood hero.
Another Dominican hitter I want to talk about is more of a contemporary of yours rather than somebody you would have grown up watching. And that's the great Vlad Guerrero. Talk about him a little bit.
Vlad Guerrero Sr. or Vlad Guerrero Jr.?
The older one. Yeah, Junior's pretty good too, but he's still got a lot to write in his book.
Isn't that funny that we are that now that you mentioned Vlad Guerrero, we have to specify because here are two great hitters. Like, who are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yes, another player from the Dominican Republic who is extremely impressive. And Vlad, I played against him. And I remember being at first base, like, seriously, like, it's not that easy. It isn't that easy. I know it's not that easy. And he is just hitting missiles against us left and right. And he couldn't be pitched to. It was an impossible task to try to get him out. Because people talk about bad ball hitters, right? Like putting the ball in play. As a matter of fact, I was looking at a stat the other day that had bad ball hitters and who make contact with pitches outside of the zone. Well, forget about just making contact. How about making hard contact? That's what Vlad Guerrero Vlad Guerrero Sr. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is different in that sense because he stays in the zone a lot more. But that bat to baseball skill, like barrel to baseball skill, it was remarkable to see. And I couldn't understand it. Like, how is this even possible? Well, it was possible, and I saw it many times. Unfortunately, I was on the receiving end of those bullets that he was hitting off the wall, in the gap, and over the fence.
It's interesting because you were a completely different kind of a hitter. You were very disciplined. You drew a lot of walks. You usually had fairly good on-base percentages, even if your average might have been 230, 240, 250. Your approach completely different from a Guerrero or a Roberto Clemente.
Yes, and now this is what's cool about being an analyst for me, because I have something, Bruce. I cannot just, I have to go all out. You know what I mean? So now, in being an analyst, I have to dive into the science. I have to dive into the physics of baseball. I have to try to really understand what's going on. And I look at my swing, and I could understand now. I can look back and say, okay, I know why the shift worked, against me. I know why that was a good strategy for other teams against me, because of the angle of my swing. I know now why I had so much power to left center field. I created a certain angle that allowed me to really drive the ball the other way. And with my legs, I used to plow through and really hit the ball far and hard. And then I look at swings like Vladimir Guerrero Sr., like Roberto Clemente, and I'm like, oh, now I see why those are high probability swings with higher average. So it's fun to go back, at times frustrating, because I'm like, man, if I would have made this adjustment, I would have been a better player. But at that moment, it didn't register, because it was more so, hey, this is what I do. I'm going to continue to do it. Yeah. So yeah, my style was totally different than that of Vlad Guerrero Sr. and the way he went about his business. I was very methodical. I used to just wait for a pitch in a box and really be disciplined in that box and aggressive in that box. So it was almost like a disciplined aggression that I had. When you talk about Vlad Guerrero, he was simply aggressive. Forget about discipline. Barrel to the baseball, and that was it. Really, really impressive.
Carlos, let's talk about Latino players in the game today. You talk to these guys, you know a number of them pretty well. There's a few that probably still hanging around from when you were playing, but you're close to the game. You know these players. What is the biggest concern in general that you hear expressed from Latino players? Problems that they face dealing with bigotry, stereotypes? What's the specific obstacle that you think today's generation of Latino player is facing?
I think there's definitely something that is in the back of their minds every single time they go out there. Is number one, they feel, I would say, that they cannot, they may not cannot advocate for themselves, So you will hear this, and I think it's you hear something to this degree, like something like, keep your head down, don't say a word, just work hard and keep moving forward, which sounds great. But what's behind that is, this is not where I need to be. This is not where I belong. You know what I mean? This is not my country. I'm in a different country. This is, this is not a major leagues. It's in the United States. It's their game. So when I hear players say that, I know it's coming from, I know what they mean, even though it may not come across that way. Like, hey, just keep your head down and work hard. Okay, that's great advice. But what I fear is that that's coming from a place of, you can't advocate for yourself. You can't be yourself, because if you are too much of yourself, that may be held against you. So that is my biggest concern, is for Latin players to understand that it is okay for you to express yourself on a baseball diamond, to share your culture with everyone and be proud of it, and that it's actually being embraced. So sometimes I think we may feel like it's not being embraced, but I think Major League Baseball has done a great job to now actually go the extra mile and say, no, please, we want Latin American players to express, themselves on the baseball field, off the field, and really share their culture with everyone. And baseball is better for it. So that's always my concern, that in the back of our minds, we may feel that we still have to hold back a little bit. And that's not the case. That really is not the case. I think Manfred has done a great job of really, really, we have all these campaigns. He's been so diligent about trying to make sure that Latin American players feel comfortable out here in the big leagues, and they feel at home, because that's the key, feeling at home. We don't want to feel like we're in a foreign land. Baseball is baseball. So that I would say is the biggest concern.
Every team, I think, today has a Latin American liaison, or maybe more than one, who helps the players with English, adjusting to the culture. When you first came into the major leagues, did that exist?
No. Let me give you a quick example. I used to go out there in the minor leagues, and I used to have my jersey, and my jersey didn't have the tilde over the N. So instead of it being an ñ, it would be an N. The problem with that is that, number one, is not my last name, and the meaning of my last name immediately changes. So if you look at Peña means rock, strength. But if you talk about pena without the ñ, without the tilde, then that the meaning of that is pity, kind of like sadness, and I'm like, well, that's the total opposite of what my last name means. So what I used to do, I used to grab a piece of athletic tape, and I used to tape it on top of my N.
Wow.
We don't have that anymore. Now, that's what I'm trying to tell you. The Major League Baseball has done a very, and that's why I want to make sure that I mention that, because I'm grateful for that, where you have the Ponle Acento campaign, which means, put the accent on it. And it encompasses different things. It's just not the way you write your name, but yes, it includes the way you write your name. You're talking about Players Weekend, for example. That's everybody. Hey, express yourselves. And we're embracing that. And you see how successful that campaign has been. So I think we're leaving that old paradigm behind and understanding that when we embrace each other, we're better for it. And we share our cultures freely and respectfully, because that's another thing. It doesn't have to be a disrespectful thing. Why would it have to be? It's all about respecting each other cultures and embracing them and learning from each other. I think baseball has done a great job of that as of late.
Do the Latino players seek you out because they know your heritage, they know your background, your reputation?
Yes. I feel, I'm proud to say that I feel a very deep connection to all the players. And even as I get older, right, the younger generation of players, when they see me, when I'm out there working, they gravitate towards me, and they feel comfortable with me. And another thing that I think we've done a good job of is understanding that, hey, okay, let's say you don't dominate the language. When they talk to me, they know that I am going to make their experience perhaps on air, where I'm doing an interview. It's going to be fun. We're going to be talking in Spanish. They may catch some words in English. And I feel like I've almost mastered that very seamless interview where, I'm speaking English to the viewer, but I'm speaking Spanish to the player I'm interviewing, and we get a little Spanglish in there, and everybody understands and everybody enjoys the conversation. So I do feel that, and I don't take that for granted, that I've earned their trust and their respect, and something that I want to make sure I protect.
We're going to have some fun with some of these artifacts, and you gave us a little bit of a sneak preview of this earlier. I think this is the scouting report that you referenced. We have it in our collection here in Cooperstown. And if you look toward the top, it's the third line that's visible, the player comparison. Carlos Peña is compared by this scout to Griffey. And that is junior, not senior. Tell us about that when you saw that for the first time.
Oh man, I couldn't believe it. And number one, awesome, because that means that I accomplished what I set out to do. So as I got older in the game and I started watching Ken Griffey play, I'm like, my goodness, this is the player I want to emulate. This is the swing I want to emulate. So I tried to do the best I could to learn that beautiful, smooth left-hander stroke. And I guess I accomplished it because the scouts saw it. But this was so cool when I saw this, Bruce. I mean, I had no clue that this was even possible. I had not seen one of these ever. And when you go through it, it's like, wow, you know, those are awesome things that they say about me. And then in the bottom with the comments that says that, you know, I have spoken with father and his brothers, supportive. They're very supportive of Carlos, you know, and I cannot read the last part, but it says something about, yeah, just complimenting my family. And I thought that was strong. That was something that I really appreciated.
Yeah, the scout comes out and says it's a good family, he raves about your family. I was not able to figure out who the scout was. You, I believe, saw this in person. Did you see the scout's name?
I don't remember who it was.
Okay.
You know, I
Was it a Mariner scout or was it because I'm thinking the Griffey connection. Was it a Mariner scout or someone
I don't
else?
remember the scout. That's a good. I have it at the house. I should look up the scout. I pretty much I saw it. I just probably forgot what the name of it. What his name was. I do remember the scout who drafted me, which is Joel Grampetro, but this was not by Joel Grampetro of Texas Rangers. So the first name I looked for was his, but this is not his.
So that's a great item that we have related to your career. This one is well, actually, let me see what I have a bit ahead here. This is a great bobblehead, which I think is also a pencil sharpener, if I'm not mistaken. That's why the bat has such a large barrel that's been hollowed out. I love this bobblehead. Tell us about this item.
You are mistaken, because this is actually, get this, this is a toothbrush holder.
Oh, really?
Isn't that even cooler? A toothbrush holder, right? So my sons have this in their bathroom.
Wow.
That is a toothbrush holder. You put your toothbrush in there in the back, and you just let it sit. I mean, how cool is that?
I don't know if I just assumed that this was a pencil sharpener, but yeah, I guess it could be a toothbrush holder as well.
Yeah. Well, it would be the pencil sharpening idea is outstanding as well. Maybe maybe I should do something with that.
And it not only does it have a useful purpose, it just looks funny. I mean, and it's so different from all the other bobbleheads. Who came up with this idea?
It was Brian Killingsworth. Brian Killingsworth with the Tampa Bay Rays at the time was the head of, worked in the media relations department, and he climbed up to the top. And he played with me in the Cape Cod League, by the way, Brian Killingsworth, a good friend of mine. And when he saw these opportunities, he jumped on them right away. I mean, Tampa Bay is a special place for me, obviously, but the fans there really, really embraced me. So those little campaigns, they were so much fun. People used to go crazy with them.
Tampa Bay is really the team that you're most associated with. And I was looking back at your numbers, and I knew you were a good player with Tampa Bay, but you had 3 huge seasons with the Rays. 07, 08, 09. You got MVP votes a couple of years. Why did things click for you in Tampa Bay, in particular those 3 seasons?
You know, that the whole entire story, if you go back and see how I ended up in Tampa Bay and how everything played out, you can kind of assume, you know, that how I came to be part of the Tampa Bay team, the Tampa Bay Rays team, you know, translated into great seasons. I mean, I was out of a job. It was, I just had done playing in Boston. They did not renew my contract. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't have a place to play. You know, where am I going to sign? And this is 2006. After having done really well in the big leagues, I found myself like on a crossroads. In a crossroad. And right there, I get invited by the Tampa Bay Rays to spring training. At that time, they were the Devil Rays, as a matter of fact. And I didn't even make the team out of spring training. The only reason why I got on the team was because someone got hurt. And you know, I don't ever rejoice in someone else's misgivings, but I got the opportunity because someone else couldn't play. Then Greg Norton's knee blew out. So they needed another first baseman. And that's how I come on the team. As a matter of fact, my contract was torn up, and then I had to sign another contract immediately because you know, the other one was void already. So it was nuts. So I drove back to Tampa Bay after having gone home, and that's how I end up on the team. So you could imagine my mentality. My mentality was, I'm not even supposed to be here. You know, God put me here. I didn't, you know, it wasn't me, certainly. I didn't have an amazing spring training. I had a solid spring training, but nothing out of the ordinary. And I played with that type of attitude. I'm like, you know what, this is a blessing for you to just be putting on this uniform. So that attitude, you can't fake that. I had that mentality of gratitude, and I took off. I just went to the ballpark free, no pressure, so grateful every single day. You know, I talk about gratitude being powerful. My goodness, it is absolutely true. I hit 46 home runs that season. 46 home runs. I drove in 121 runs, hit 282. You know, had an on-base percentage of about 400. It was the best year of my career, and I did not even make the team out of spring training. So just wrap your head around that. The rest is history. After I get started that way, it was like Tampa Bay was the place I was meant to be at. So I played very loose and free in Tampa Bay. My talent was able to express itself fully.
Who was your hitting coach those years?
It was who was at that time? It was Anderson. I drew a blank right now on his first name.
Dave Henderson?
Henderson.
Steve Henderson.
Oh, it was Steve Henderson.
Steve Henderson, yeah, played for the Mets. Yeah.
And Hendu, of course, Hendu. So we call him Hendu. Hendu was awesome to me. And I was talking to my son about this the other day. I'm like, son, you know what my hitting coach used to say to me whenever I had a bad at bat? I'm like, what, Dad? Like, sometimes I carry it with me. He used to give me a piece of paper. He goes like, hey, how did you see the ball? I'm like, Hendu, I kind of like a 3 out of 5. He's like, all right, good. I'm glad you have identified that. Next time, let's see if we can get to a 4 and a 5. Is that all right? And I'm like, yes. All right, so give me this piece of paper. And he used to make me do this to it. So I would do like this, and then he goes, all right, throw it in the garbage. That last at bat is gone. And I thought it was brilliant because he wanted me to do something physical. It was something psychological where if I had a bad at bat, I would learn from it and then, you know, crumble it up and throw it in the garbage, and that was done. So that did not serve me anymore. So I wouldn't dwell on them. It was brilliant. And I was teaching my son that the other day, and I said, my coach, Steve Henderson, Hendu, you should teach me this. I think you should do it too.
And it worked, obviously.
It did. Those were amazing years. My family and I have beautiful memories in Tampa Bay. Beautiful memories. The great people there. I used to even love going to the supermarket over there in St. Pete because people were so warm and so loving. You're talking about fans in St. Petersburg, and I know that that's a very controversial topic because of the fact that the stadium is not packed. But they are great fans over there. They're very warm. They love their ball club.
Yeah, it's a pretty good team too. I thought they'd be going to the World Series this year. Of course, short series in the postseason can often give us different results, but they were the best team in the American League during the regular season.
Indeed.
In our remaining moments with Carlos Peña, I'd like to take your questions or comments for Carlos. You can post those in our chat box. Let's go to a comment from William Caesar. William writes, Carlos, you should write a book about your life in baseball from a Latino perspective. Have you ever thought about writing a book?
Well, I'm glad you asked. As a matter of fact, that's something that we've been working on. Talking about, I told you earlier about the Charlie situation where I was calling myself Charlie. So it has, the title has something to do with that. I'll make sure it's a surprise. I don't want to give it away now, but yeah, I'm working on it because it's true. It's a crazy story. It's an amazing trajectory. And I think it's a story that needs to be told. And I was in the middle of it, and I'm proud of that trajectory. And it's something that I want to share with the world, no doubt about it. So I'm working on that.
Our next question references your brief time with the Oakland A's. It comes in from Jeffrey Cohen, who's one of our regular listeners and watchers. Jeffrey writes, thank you for the program. Question for Carlos. Was your character portrayed accurately in the movie Moneyball?
Oh, great question. I do get that a lot. It was not exactly the way things happened. I think it's a great movie because the idea was to try to tell the story of how sabermetrics broke into the game, and they were looking at the on-base percentage of two veteran players versus the unknown on-base percentage of the young player that I was at the moment. It turned out that I became a high OBP guy and a power guy. So exactly the player that they wanted, I ended up becoming. But it was not portrayed exactly. It was a Hollywood story. I think they did their job. It was a great movie, but I did not get traded while I was in the major leagues. I had already gotten sent down to the minor leagues, and I got traded from Sacramento, the AAA ball club. So, right there immediately you're like, okay, so that was not the way it happened in the movie. But it doesn't take away from what the movie was trying to accomplish. Another thing that the movie did not talk about was the fact that it wasn't just sabermetrics. You also had, Barry Zito, Hudson, and Mulder on your on that team, and you had the MVP of the American League in Miguel Tejada, and you had Eric Chavez playing third base. So it was not just numbers that made that team a winning ball club. So I always like to make that distinction. A great movie, nevertheless.
Yeah. Comment and question coming in from Evan Katz. 1 degree of baseball separation from Carlos Peña. I played adult baseball with his NU shortstop teammate, Kevin Spitz. You remember him?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And Evan's question, can Carlos explain how the behind-the-scenes staff at the MLB Network prepare the on-camera host with information and background? What is a typical night when you're doing one of the nighttime shows, MLB Tonight? What's that like behind the scenes?
Well, yeah, a lot goes into it. We have a production meeting where we talk about the topics that we want to touch upon, and that's why I'm very proud to say and humbled to say that as a producer, we've won Emmys. And the reason I say we is because it is a team collaboration, and it's awesome to compete at that level against other networks. We take that very seriously. So when tonight I'm getting prepared for a show, I'm already sending in topics that I want to touch upon, and I'm already talking to the editing team about how I want to break down the videos. As a matter of fact, I'm doing so for Friday's show. That's going to be in the World Series, and I'm already thinking of what I'm going to put together. And then I go in to the edit room and I sit there with the editor, and you kind of direct the video on how you kind of making a movie on how you want the video to go, and then you have to practice how you will deliver it. So imagine that every single show you're going to have at least 2 breakdowns or 2 movies that you make and that you produce, that then you're going to have to live talk over and narrate and deliver. So a lot of preparation goes into that. And then you have these topics where you're going to be on camera talking about certain issues, whatever it is that's coming up. And you have to then do your homework on every single of those topics that will be touched upon. And if I try to go, I prepare, I'm reading, I'm trying to do as much research as possible. And I must say this, we have incredible editors. And if you look at the research team that we have, it is ridiculous what they're able to do. I mean, you can ask them any question, and Bruce, they'll find it. It's how many 2-strike bunt hits did I have in July in my career? And in a matter of, I don't know, 10 minutes, I have the answer. It's unreal. It's unbelievable. The database it's just vast.
For every hour that you're on the air, how many hours of prep work do you think goes into it?
I would say 3. That's a good
Yeah.
that's a good estimate. So for every hour, 3 hours of prep, and it takes more than just me. Like I'm talking to a team of guys that me bring a nice breakdown. And it's crazy because I'll be in there, Bruce, and saying, look, I want this line here. I want you to draw this and put this angle over here. And then that gets sent to another department of graphics. And from graphics, it goes to editing and rendering and et cetera, et cetera. It's unbelievable. The team that we have, it blows my mind. It really does.
We have a couple of other questions. One comes in from Steve Sankner, and as a Yankee fan, I have to admit my bias there. This one interests me in particular. Steve asks, when you signed a minor league contract with the Yankees in 2006, do you feel you had a good chance to make the big league club? I remember that time. The Yankees needed a first baseman. I thought you would have been a perfect answer. It yet never materialized. What happened there?
I know. Yeah, thank you. I'm with you, Bruce, precisely. And that's why I went in the office eventually and I said, I want to leave. And I asked for my release or for my transfer, whatever you want to call it. I think there's like a technical term for that when you go in and you say, I want to be a free agent. And they honored that and they let me walk. And shortly thereafter, I signed with the Red Sox and I was in the big leagues. I do not understand how I was not in that big league roster, especially after having a track record of being successful already in the big leagues. And they needed a first baseman and they didn't have one. And here I am, a guy that had previously hit 20, almost 30 home runs in the big leagues and played Gold Glove defense in the minors, doing pretty well. So there's nothing else to prove except give me a shot at the Big Apple. And they did not. So that's why I walked out and I went, became a free agent and signed with the Red Sox.
Yeah, I think the Yankees made a bit of a mistake there, but we won't dwell on that too long. Final question comes in from Bruce Becker, and it actually matches up with my final slide. Bruce wants to know, what is the meaning of placata?
Nice. Placata is basically an expression that my brothers and I used whenever we made hard contact. So like playing stickball was huge for us. Like we would do it outside all the time in the Dominican Republic, and then getting to Massachusetts when it was not, 3 feet of snow outside, because even on 1 foot of snow, we still played outside. But if it got too crazy, okay, we couldn't. But every single time we used to crush the baseball, we go, placata, and kind of like rub it on each other's faces. Yeah, take that, placata, and then it became more of anything that we did that was right. Like if we were wrestling or something, I pushed him over, whatever, he falls, I'm like, placata. If I tackled you playing football, I will get in your face and go, placata. Whenever we did something that was good, if I got a good grade and I came back home with like 100 on my test, and I would slam it on the table and be like, pop, talking to my dad, like, papa, placata, and so it became like a sound or a phrase of triumph. And whenever we did something good and conquered something, we would say placata. So now, it's basically synonymous with that, with triumph, with conquering, with getting challenged and you rising to the occasion and defeating and meeting the challenge and conquering it. So I say, whenever you have a drop the mic moment, you can say placata. Whenever you have an achievement, say placata. And certainly, if you're playing baseball and you crush the ball, you can say placata as well.
And I believe you finish each of the Connection shows by saying that, right?
Probably. I can't help it. I can't help it. I mean, why not, right? So it's like that final exclamation sign at the end of a good work, so yes.
You won't find it in the Spanish dictionary, but it is in the Peña dictionary, placata, so we now understand what that means. Our thanks go out to Carlos Peña, former Major League first baseman for a number of teams, standout player in particular with the Tampa Bay Rays, now doing nice work for the MLB Network. We'll see you on tonight, right?
Yes, make sure you tune in. It'll be on after the game. So it'll be pretty
Right.
cool analyzing what happens in Game 1 of the World Series.
Who else are you going to be on with?
I'm going to be with Adnan and Verk. So
Okay.
yeah, I look forward to it. We have a lot of fun.
And you said you're at a hotel right now. You're going into a studio tonight?
Yes. So right now I'm here at my hotel. Yeah, very nice. An extended stay, but it does the job, and it's really close to the studio. So now I'm probably gonna go get a workout in. I'm making some calls to the editors, and we're gonna have a production meeting pretty soon. I'm gonna see if I can get the workout in before we go into the production meeting.
Well, Carlos, we really appreciate your time, your stories, your insights have been terrific. Really had a lot of fun talking about your playing career, your broadcasting work, which of course continues with MLB Network, your Latino heritage, and your involvement with Hall of Fame connections. We thank Carlos. We also thank the Ford Motor Company, being a very generous sponsor. Carlos, thank you very much. You're always welcome back here in Cooperstown. We hope to see you in the spring.
I most definitely will take you up on that offer. I can't wait to get back there. Thank you so much for having me, and for everyone who listened in.
Thank you, Carlos. And we do appreciate Carlos giving us his time on a busy day as the World Series is about to begin. We thank all of our listeners and viewers as well. Have a great day, everybody.